right, so we are entering into a new month as we start off this first week of September. And because we have a new month, we have a new theme. So our theme for, did I say December? September. Go figure, you know.
It's only 2 months off.
Not 2 months off, you know. December, September, October, one of these months. Anyway, thank you very much. We are in November. And so our theme for this month is grace, as we are finishing off, coming to the conclusion of our year-long theme of building a community. Grace is the quality that we're going to bring into the month of November and explore that this month. So my talk title today is Grace Unfolding. And one of the things that I do often is I look up what the definition is of the words, what it means. And when I looked up grace in the Webster's dictionary, it's not exactly what I want to talk about. So I was like, that's not the definition at all. So I went to Ernest Holmes, our founder, and his definition of grace is the givingness of life. He says, grace is the givingness of life. This givingness of life is given to us unconditionally. There is absolutely nothing we can do to make us deserve more of it or to deserve less of it. It is an unconditional flow of the goodness of life, the goodness of God, the goodness of spirit, that universal creative love intelligence moving itself into us just the way that it does to everyone. Doesn't matter what we've done or what we should do, we didn't do, what we thought we were supposed to be doing. None of that makes any difference. Grace is given to us unconditionally. And it is that experience of this is one of the phrases he uses, is an unmerited divine assistance. Unmerited divine assistance. In other words, again, we don't have to do anything to earn grace. It is the natural givingness of God coming to us whenever we need it, if we allow ourselves to be that open receptacle for it. If we do the work in consciousness that we prepare ourselves for that place of it, we might experience it a little more easily than we would have if we're resisting it. Because sometimes we resist those things that we really need. Anybody experience that? Yeah, something we really need to be doing, but we are resisting it. Grace is really these benevolent forces, that benevolent goodness of the universe that is operating without any assistance from us, and it operates almost at a level that is beyond our logical understanding of it. Grace is sometimes hard to define, but when you've experienced it, you know it. And once you know it, you really can't unknow that. Once you had that experience of grace, once you've felt it operating in your life, it's really hard not to believe that it's there and believe that it's possible for us in any situation that we have. Grace is found in every step that we take through our lives. And oftentimes it's a gradual unfoldment. Like we're moving along and all of a sudden things are just a little easier for us. Or things seem to line up better for us. And so sometimes it feels like it's this very gradual process of this benevolence of spirit coming into our lives. But sometimes it hits us in all of a sudden in a rush. And most often that's during those challenging times in our lives. Often, again, we resist those challenging times. We don't really want to have to experience something that makes us grow. And so we resist that. And yet if we relax into it and allow it to happen, we find out that grace not only is unfolding, but it unfolds in a way that is beyond what we could even predict. In quantum physics, they have this idea that events happen oftentimes in a discontinuous cycle, in a discontinuous way. In other words, we can't see where the beginning was to where we are now. It just seems to go from this point to this point, and we can't figure out what's in between. Scientists call that a quantum leap. And grace happens often in our challenging times as a quantum leap. All of a sudden, you're in a struggle, you're going through some kind of a challenge in your life, and boom, there's the answer. And you really can't figure out what it was in between that that got you to that place, but you know it's there, and you know that it's right, and it feels good. And so when we have those experiences, that discontinuous event in there, that quantum leap, that can be really powerful, and that can be something that's transformative in our lives. I know I've told this story before, but when I was experiencing my brother going through his transition, I experienced one of those quantum leaps. I had this feeling of what life and death was while my brother was in the middle of it. And before he made the transition, I had an experience that leaped me forward in my understanding of life and death. And it healed a lot of the issues that had been operating in my life around this idea of the pain and the suffering and the trauma and everything that has to go up in with somebody dying. That it couldn't be, there couldn't be anything but pain in that process. And yet when I had this experience, it was like, whew, I'm light years ahead of where I was, because I prepared myself and allowed myself to have that grace flow through me, and it came in a surge for me. So these quantum leaps of experiencing grace can be really super powerful in our lives. And oftentimes, those are most easily distinguished in those times of adversity or challenge, because we're in such a struggle. We're in such a place in our lives that the dichotomy between that and this experience of grace is so profound that we understand that moment, that's what grace really is. And like I said, once I had that experience, I knew I could never go back. I was forever changed by the experience of it. And again, like I said, it often happens most dramatically in our challenges, but it happens throughout our lives all the time. If you're going about your day, doing your daily tasks and things like that, and there's an ease about them, and things just seem to fall into place as we relax into it and trust that the universe is going to provide whatever it is we need to know. I remember as I was going through ministerial school, the question was always, well, what are you going to do when you graduate? And my response always was, I don't know. It's on a need-to-know basis, and I don't need to know yet. I just need to take the next step. And so taking that next step each time, relaxing into that experience, and allowing whatever needs to happen in that moment to happen, is that experience of grace, is that experience of that grace unfoldment. It's that unmerited benevolence of spirit that's just doing what it does. I think coming into Science of Mind, one of the greatest gifts that I received in here was to get away from an idea of a judgmental or a punishing God. Something that some way that there was this thing out there that I had to prove myself to it, to make it operate in my life. And to release that idea was one of the most freeing things that I ever experienced in my life, to not have to worry about, I'm just going forward, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm guided and directed from that internal source, and I just do what's in front of me. Do I always do the right thing? No. Do I learn from those things? Sometimes. Sometimes not as much, and I repeat them again. But to know that, I remember Reverend Doug saying this a long time ago, that, you're walking down a road and you see a right turn and a left turn, and you hear this little voice saying, go right, go right, go right. And you go left. And Spirit says, okay. And we go left. And then you come to another fork in the road, and it's go right, go right, go right. And I'm going to go left. And Spirit says, okay. And it just does that because it's going to follow along with us where we need to go. And at some point, we have that internal nudge that is powerful enough that we go right. And then we watch things unfold in a way that was much easier than all those left turns that we were taking as we were going through. And I really think that's how it works. Each moment, each step that we have in life, we have that free will, that choice to go right or left, to go straight, to turn around, whatever that direction is. We have a choice to do that. Spirit is going to accompany us along the way. And it's going to be there all the time. It's not judging us. It's just accompanying us. And at some point, when we relax into it and trust that intuition that's telling us to go one way or the other, then those are the moments we experience the grace of God. Those are the moments we experience it flowing through us in a way that we probably could not have imagined when we're letting our intellectual mind dictate the way that we're going. But to relax into it and allow it to move through us, that's really the way we begin to feel grace. Now, there are things that we can do to enhance that experience of grace. One is to become silent, is to just become silent and listen, to not let our chattering minds dictate every single step we take, but to go within and feel what's in our body, as Kelly so beautifully talked about in her meditation. What is my body telling me in this moment to do? You know, oftentimes we say that's that gut feeling. You know, right or left, which way do I go? Let me listen to my gut and see which way it takes me to go. You know, which way am I being divinely directed to take the next step in my life? When I was doing my research, at the beginning of each month, what I do is I go through my Kindle library of all my books, and I find the ones that my go-to books, my go-to authors. And I look up what they have to say about grace. And so what was funny to me was this month, almost everything I found about grace was in one of the books from Joel Goldsmith, in any of the books from Joel Goldsmith. He talks about grace all the time. And so I just want to share this is from his pivotal work, The Infinite Way, which is what he calls his philosophy. He says, spiritual living is a life lived by grace, not by might or power. It's a life in which we find all things appearing to us in the order in which we need them, sometimes before we ourselves are aware of that need. Anybody ever experienced that? This is living by grace, and it is attained only when things, thoughts, and desires have been overcome. Spiritual life is that state of being in which we live by grace and know that whatever the need is, the answer will appear. Everything that comes as a gift from God. As a matter of fact, it comes just a little before we need it, even before we know we are going to need it. A path opens before us of indescribable beauty, joy, and peace. Living by grace, allowing grace to unfold through us, is the spiritual path. It's the path of the mystics. It's the path of most spiritual seekers. It is that path of knowing that we are loved unconditionally by this benevolent, universal power, presence, life force, whatever you want to call it. It is knowing that it is operating in our lives all the time. So becoming silent is one of the ways that we can do that. Other ways are some of the other spiritual practices we have, demonstrating more compassion, more empathy, kindness towards others, living in a state of joy, forgiving easily, being grateful for those things that come into our lives, even the mundane and the simple things. In all things, be grateful. These will actually begin to bring more of a deeper experience of grace into our lives. I was reading earlier today, earlier this week, and I was reading. It wasn't written down anywhere, but as I was reading, I remembered this bumper sticker that I used to see all over the place. That was my favorite bumper sticker of all times. Practice random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty. And so it prompted me to look up where that came from. And so in 1982, a woman named Ann Herbert was sitting in a cafe in Sausalito, California. And she was in a state of turmoil in her life. Things were not going well in her life. And as she's sitting there at this cafe, she hears these words in her consciousness as she's sitting there in the quiet by herself. And so she grabs a pencil and writes it on the placemat in front of her. Random acts of kindness and senseless acts of beauty. In 1983, she wrote a book by that title, which recounted numerous incidents of people practicing kindness or senseless acts of beauty. And what she said afterwards with that, it was that for her, this was the most grace-filled experience of her life, to simply take that moment and focus, take that time that it took her to write that book and focus on all of these beautiful acts of kindness and ways that people demonstrated their love for the world by creating senseless acts of beauty. I had a friend one day, probably about 15 years ago, complaining because of all of the stuff they're putting around the freeways. She said, why are they spending all that money on putting artwork around the freeways and making the walls pretty? And in my head, I heard Joel Goldsmith saying something that he'd said in many of the lectures that I've listened to of his. He says, if you have 2 coppers, 2 coins, in other words, spend one on bread and the other one on hyacinths for the soul. And so when she was telling me this, all I could hear in my head was hyacinths for the soul. Bringing beauty into our lives in ways that are unexplainable, defendable even, where we don't have to have any reason for it other than the joy of having something beautiful in our lives. I've just recently purchased a new home, and so I've been having a wonderful time just finding beautiful ways to put things in my home. And I was in Trader Joe's on Thursday, and I love their orchids, and they had this most amazing orchid. So I picked up the orchid and I put it in my cart. And as I'm shopping around there, I was stopped by almost every person in that store, like, oh my God, that is so beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, I got the last one. Sorry, It's like, but it was just this gorgeous orchid that's all in these fall colors and it's just really full and everything. It's beautiful, but it's like finding these ways of bringing beauty into our lives that we don't have to defend the reason for it. It's just because it's beautiful, and it's going to bring a smile to us, and it's going to make us feel something beyond what we're feeling in the mundane, ordinary world that we're in. Finding ways to bring beauty into our lives, whatever way that is that works for us as we're going through our days. So find those things that make us feel like we're connected to something deeper than ourselves. You know, when we are enjoying something in that present moment, we are making ourselves available for the limitless possibilities of spirit. When we are actually fully present in the enjoyment of what is, in those things of beauty, in those acts of kindness, when we are fully experiencing that, then there is an opening within us for everything that we could possibly need to happen in our lives. It is a way of allowing ourselves to be fully present with what is and experiencing it to the fullest point possible. We can do this through practices like mindfulness. Mindfulness, the biggest component of mindfulness is being fully present and fully aware in the moment. Being absolutely available to what is here for us right now. You know, oftentimes we spend time in the future worrying about what's going to happen, or we spend time in the past with anger and regret and things like that have happened. But when we stay in that very present moment, as I talked about last month, that razor's edge of this particular moment in time, and keep ourselves fully present here, that's where possibility exists. There's not much possibility happening in the past. It's already done, and the future hasn't yet arrived. But if we stay in this present moment, everything is possible for us. That allows us to begin to experience the awe and the wonder and the grace that is available to us through our connection with Spirit, through this benevolent, unjudging, unconditional love that is always out there and always making itself available to us. We live in awe and wonder, and we fully experience the magic that is happening right here and right now in us. And so ways that we can begin to do this is to not resist the challenges, but to embrace them as opportunities to experience more grace. Embrace the challenging things in our lives as what's here for me to know? What is here for me to experience? You know, I think so many times we are so resistant to any kind of problems because we're just so worried about how bad it's going to get. But if we can be fully present in it, we can watch it ease and dissipate through that grace that is flooding into us. we begin to cherish all of those little moments of awe and wonder and joy, being fully present with what we're experiencing right now, and not letting our minds be consumed by the past or the future. When we do this, we remain open to that transformative power and that presence of grace that is always operating through us right here and right now. And so it is our way of being available for all that Spirit has to offer us and being grateful for when that happens. Now, November is traditionally a month of gratitude. And so gratitude is one of those practices that will help us stay in the present moment. It helps us experience the wonder and the awe of things like that. And there are ways that we can bring more gratitude in our lives when we're stuck, when we're in that challenging situation, like, we're experiencing something we don't want to experience, and we think, well, what do I have to be grateful for here? But if we can do something that shifts that mindset around to there are things to be grateful for. One of the things I like to do, being a former public school teacher, is I take the alphabet and I say, okay, letter A. What am I grateful for that begins with the letter A? I had a delicious apple for breakfast this morning. I am grateful for apples. How about the letter B? Find something that we're grateful for in B. Letter C, letter D. And just go through the alphabet, finding those things. You get to some of them like X. Well, I am grateful that we have X-rays out there because, there are times when we need that. And, as we go through things, we may have a challenge on some of those words. But, it's also an opportunity for us to be creative and fun with it and to let it experience a little more levity in the situation. So that's a great way to begin to practice it. When you're stuck in something, find a way to shift that awareness out of the stuck situation that you're feeling and find a way to be grateful for things that are going on in our lives. One of the easiest ways is to 3 things I'm grateful for in the morning, 3 things I'm grateful for at the end of the day. So right now, let's just close our eyes. And I want you to think of 3 things that you are grateful for right now. It can be the most simple things, like I am really grateful for warm sweaters on this cool morning. Think of 3 things right now that you are grateful for. Would anybody like to share one of the things they're grateful for?
My dog.
Your dog? Yeah.
Family and friends.
Family and friends.
Breath.
What's that?
Breath.
Breath, absolutely.
A home.
A home.
Ideas flowing through my head.
Ideas flowing through your head. Simple things, yes.
Colonoscopies.
Colonoscopies. Let's make sure that plumbing is working really well there, so yes. I just had my first one. Thank you very much. There we go. It is so simple to just shift our feeling of challenges in the moment to find those things that we're grateful for. The other practice that is so powerful is forgiveness. Finding ways to forgive. We can always find something to forgive, even if it's something for myself. I forgive myself because I had to leave my dog this morning. I forgive myself for going 5 miles over the speed limit as I was driving in here. I forgive myself for thinking those not so nice thoughts about the person in front of me on the car. Whatever that thing is. Forgive ourselves for that and let it go. By actually verbalizing that, it is a way that we begin to shift that energy again. Because as long as it's there and we haven't forgiven it, it's a stuck energy in us. And so if we speak it out, let it go, it's a wonderful opportunity. So close your eyes. What are 3 things that you can forgive right now, either for yourself or someone else? Does anybody have a forgiveness they want to shout out? These sometimes are a little more personal, and you certainly wouldn't want to say anything about anybody else. But is there anything that's out there? Forgiving myself for the food choices I make. forgiving myself, I don't know. Oftentimes it's like, I shouldn't have been thinking so harshly about somebody else. I could be a little more generous there. Yeah. Yes?
I forgive myself for my total inability to ever close a cupboard door or push in a drawer.
There you go. Absolutely, yeah. Just, find those ways to shift energy allows us to be a space where grace can flow in. When we shift that energy around inside of us and don't let it remain stagnant, then we open up a space for possibility. As I said, grace is that opening for the infinite benevolence of Spirit to flow through. And just remember, Spirit is benevolent equally to everyone. There is no judgment. It doesn't care. It is all about experiencing life through you and experiencing life in a way that uplifts the consciousness of the world. Let's take this into prayer. I invite our spiritual practitioners to stand and surround us, holding us in the consciousness of love and peace and joy and benevolence. And so if you would, just let your eyes relax and your shoulders drop and take in that deep breath. Knowing that right here and right now is that unconditional presence of grace. It has always been there. It will always be there. There is absolutely nothing that limits it or withholds it from our experience. For that grace is that givingness of life, the outpouring of Spirit as unconditional love, as perfect peace, as wisdom and clarity and infinite, limitless possibility. I know that this is the very nature of the divine, to pour itself forth into expression perfectly and uniquely in each one of our lives. And I know that we, each one of us individually, is aligned with that perfection, with that divine grace that is moving itself into expression in our lives at all times. And I know that there are things that we can do to begin to experience this in a more profound way. Opening ourselves and making ourselves available for that impressive Spirit, for that well of grace to flow into our experience, to show up in the mundane steps that we take as we traverse our day, to show up as that quantum leap when it's most needed in our lives. And I know that each one of us is forever changed by the experience of grace unfolding itself in perfection, in harmony, and in love in each one of our lives. And how grateful I am to know this, how grateful I am to see it happening, how grateful I am to feel it in my own life and the life of this center. Everyone that we serve, everyone that we come in contact with, knowing that the perfection of the divine is fully operating as that benevolent grace. So I release this word into the law. Knowing it is complete, I let it go and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is.